Imagine you wake up tomorrow and every bottle of soap on earth is gone. No shampoo, no hand wash, no shower gel, no detergent. At first, you laugh it off. I'll just use water, you say. But 3 days pass. Your hands start to smell like something you can't wash away. Grease clings to your skin like a second layer. A cut on your finger turns red, then swollen, then hot to the touch. You reach for water again. It does almost nothing. Now imagine this isn't a thought experiment. Imagine this was simply life for over 190,000 years of human existence. Long before soap, long before shampoo, long before anyone had ever heard the word hygiene. So here's the question that should keep you up at night. If soap didn't exist, how did humans survive their own bodies? Let's go back. Not a few hundred years, not even a few thousand. Let's go back to the very beginning of us. 200,000 years ago, somewhere on the plains of Africa, the first Homo sapiens are hunting, sweating, bleeding, and touching everything with their bare hands. They have no idea what bacteria is. They can't see it. They can't smell most of it. They have no concept that the thing killing their children isn't a curse or an angry spirit or bad luck. It's invisible, it's on their hands, and it's everywhere. Here's the part most people never stop to consider. Water alone does not kill germs. You can rinse your hands in a river for 10 minutes straight, and the oil, the grease, the bacteria clinging to your skin will barely budge. Water and oil do not mix. This is basic chemistry now, but for early humans, this wasn't a fact. This was an invisible wall between them and survival. So picture the scene. A hunter guts an animal with his bare hands. Blood, fat, and bacteria coat his fingers. He rinses them in a stream. They still smell. They still feel greasy. And 2 days later, a small cut on his palm turns into something far more dangerous. No soap, no antiseptic, no idea why. This was the hidden war early humans were fighting every single day. Not lions, not famine, something smaller, something that couldn't be speared or outrun. And they had absolutely no tool built to fight it. So what did they do? Here's where it gets strange. Humans didn't invent cleanliness on purpose. They stumbled into it, slowly, accidentally. Almost by luck. Picture a fire, thousands of years ago. Someone is cooking meat over burning wood. Fat drips from the meat into the ashes below. It sizzles, it smokes, and it leaves behind something strange in the ash. A slippery, waxy residue that feels different. Most people who touched it probably thought nothing of it. But somewhere, at some point, someone touched that greasy ash residue, and then touched water. And they noticed something impossible. The grease that had refused to leave their skin for years, the same grease that clung no matter how hard they scrubbed, suddenly slid away. They had just witnessed, without knowing it, one of the earliest primitive forms of soap-like chemistry on Earth. Fat plus ash plus water. By pure accident, they had discovered the ancestor of soap thousands of years before anyone understood why it worked. But here's the twist that makes this so much more interesting. This discovery didn't spread like wildfire. It wasn't written down. It wasn't taught in schools. There were no schools. This knowledge lived and died with individual people, individual fires, individual accidents, sometimes lost for generations before being rediscovered somewhere else entirely. Which means for most of early human history, this secret barely existed at all. So the real question becomes even bigger. If almost nobody knew this trick, how did entire ancient civilizations, with cities of thousands of people, survive without getting wiped out by their own filth? Here's something most people never think about when they picture ancient civilizations. We picture pyramids, temples, golden thrones. We rarely picture the smell. Picture ancient Uruk, one of the first cities on Earth over 5,000 years ago. Tens of thousands of people packed into narrow streets with no plumbing, no soap, no sewage systems. Waste piles up. Sweat soaks into clothing that's rarely changed. Wounds fester in the heat. And there is no separation between dirty and clean the way we understand it today. This wasn't just uncomfortable, this was lethal. Historians studying ancient mortality patterns have long pointed to something disturbing. Infection, not war, not famine, may have been one of the greatest silent killers of the ancient world. A blister could become gangrene, a childbirth could become fatal, a tiny cut from a farming tool could be a death sentence. And there was no soap to stop it. So civilizations were forced to solve this problem, not because they understood germs, but because they had no other choice. Survival demanded it. And this is where things get fascinating, because different civilizations, completely isolated from each other, on different continents, started arriving at strangely similar solutions. Let's travel to ancient Egypt. If you think Egyptians were dirty because they lacked soap, you're about to be very surprised. Egyptians were obsessed with cleanliness. Priests were required to bathe multiple times a day before entering temples. Nobles bathed daily. Even common workers had access to cleansing rituals most modern people would assume didn't exist until centuries later. Their secret weapon wasn't soap. It was something buried in the desert, a mineral called natron. Natron is a naturally occurring salt found near dry lake beds in Egypt. It's alkaline, meaning it reacts with oils and fats in a way that breaks them down, almost exactly the way soap does today. Egyptians used natron not just to clean their skin, but famously to dry out and preserve the bodies of the dead during mummification. The same substance used to keep pharaohs pure for the afterlife was also used by ordinary people to fight grease and grime on their own skin, mixed with oils to create some of the earliest known cleansing pastes in human history. But here's the twist. Natron alone was harsh, drying, sometimes irritating to skin exposed to Egypt's brutal sun. So Egyptians didn't stop there. They combined natron, animal fats, and plant oils to create early cleansing balms. Not quite soap, but startlingly close in function. Some ancient Egyptian medical texts even describe formulas combining oils with alkaline salts specifically to treat skin conditions. Egypt had unknowingly created a primitive skincare industry, thousands of years before the word skincare existed. But if Egypt found a way, what happened everywhere else? Did every civilization discover this by pure coincidence? Or did something even stranger happen? Now travel further east to ancient Mesopotamia, Babylon, Sumer. Archaeologists uncovered something extraordinary. A clay tablet dated to around 2800 BCE, one of the oldest written recipes in human history. And it wasn't a recipe for food, it was a recipe for a soap-like substance. Water, alkali, cassia oil, boiled together into a cleansing formula used for washing wool, for medicinal purposes, and quite possibly for the skin itself. Let that sink in for a moment. Nearly 5,000 years ago, in a world without modern chemistry, without laboratories, without a single scientist, someone had already reverse-engineered the basic chemical reaction that creates soap. Fat, reacting with alkali, to form something new entirely. They called it saponification without ever knowing the word. They didn't understand molecules. They didn't understand chemical bonds breaking and reforming. But through pure trial, pure repetition, pure human stubbornness, they found it. And once one civilization stumbled onto it, the question becomes even more haunting. How many times in human history was this secret discovered, and then lost forever? Here's where the story takes a turn nobody expects. The Greeks and Romans, two of the most advanced civilizations of the ancient world, largely rejected the idea of using soap-like substances on their skin at all. Instead, they invented something almost stranger. They coated their bodies in oil. Athletes, soldiers, and citizens would rub olive oil across their entire body before exercising or bathing. The oil would mix with sweat, dirt, and dead skin, loosening it from the surface. Then, instead of washing it off with anything resembling soap, they used a tool called a strigil, a curved metal scraper. They would physically scrape the oil, sweat, and grime off their skin, layer by layer, like peeling away a second skin made entirely of filth. It sounds primitive. It sounds almost barbaric, but it worked. In fact, some Roman writings suggest the leftover oil and grime scraped from famous athletes was considered valuable, even sold as a strange kind of ancient beauty product believed to carry the strength of the athlete within it. Meanwhile, the Romans built something even more astonishing to support this ritual. Massive public bathhouses, some capable of holding thousands of people at once, with heated pools, cold plunge pools, steam rooms, and elaborate social customs built entirely around the act of getting clean. Cleanliness wasn't just survival to the Romans, it became identity, status, culture. But notice what's happening here. Three different civilizations, three completely different solutions. Egypt with natron and oils, Babylon with an early chemical soap, Rome with oil and scraping. None of them had the internet. None of them had shared laboratories. None of them could call each other. And yet all of them arrived at the same core discovery through different paths. Grease breaks down grease. Oil pulls away oil. And somehow, humans across the entire ancient world figured this out independently. Which raises an unsettling question. Was this knowledge something humans invented, or something humans were forced to discover, again and again, because the alternative was death? Now here's a secret almost nobody talks about. While Egypt was mixing minerals, and Babylon was boiling alkali, and Rome was scraping oil off their skin, an entirely different solution was quietly growing out of the ground. Certain plants naturally contain a compound called saponin, a substance that, when crushed and mixed with water, creates a soapy, foaming lather almost identical to modern soap. One of these plants is soapwort, found across parts of Europe and Asia. Crush the leaves, add water, and you get a natural foam capable of lifting dirt and oil from skin, hair, and fabric. Indigenous peoples across the Americas discovered similar soap-like plants long before European contact, using yucca root and other saponin-rich plants to create lathering cleansers for skin, hair, and even ceremonial washing. Across Asia, plants like soap berries were crushed and used the exact same way, forming natural suds that people used for centuries. Think about what this means. Humans on completely different continents, separated by oceans, with zero contact with each other, all found the same solution hiding inside nature. Not because they were told, not because they read it somewhere, but because nature had already built the answer, and humanity simply had to notice it. Which forces us to ask something even bigger. Was cleanliness something humans invented, or something the natural world had been quietly offering us the entire time, waiting to be discovered? By now, you might be thinking the story is winding down, that humanity had solved the problem. But here's the twist almost nobody expects. For centuries after these discoveries, most of this knowledge remained fragmented, expensive, or completely inaccessible to ordinary people. Soap-like substances existed, but for a huge stretch of history, they were often treated as luxury items, used by the wealthy, priests, or the elite, while the majority of the population still relied on water, sand, ash, or nothing at all. Entire eras of human history, including large stretches of medieval Europe, saw actual soap making become a genuine craft and industry, with soap makers guarding their recipes as closely as any secret weapon. Because in a world without antibiotics, without modern medicine, cleanliness quite literally determined who lived and who died. Wounds that stayed dirty became infections. Infections became fever. Fever became death. And it wasn't until centuries later, long after ash, natron, oils, plants, and alkali had already quietly done the job, that scientists finally understood why any of this worked at all. The discovery of germs, the understanding of bacteria, the realization that soap doesn't just feel clean, it physically breaks apart the outer layer of harmful microbes, destroying them at a molecular level. Humans had been fighting an invisible war for tens of thousands of years, using weapons they didn't even know were weapons. Here's where this story stops being about soap entirely. Because what we've really been tracing isn't the history of a bathroom product. It's the history of human survival itself. Every civilization that figured out how to fight filth, bacteria, and infection gained something invisible but massive. Fewer deaths from infection, healthier populations, longer lifespans, and the ability to build denser, larger, more complex societies. Cleanliness wasn't just about smelling nice. It was one of the invisible forces that allowed cities to grow without collapsing under disease. It allowed populations to expand. It allowed humans to live closer together than almost any other species on Earth without wiping themselves out. In a strange way, soap, and everything that came before it, helped build civilization itself. Every ash pile beside a cooking fire, every mineral scraped from a dry lake bed, every plant crushed by curious hands, every oil rubbed onto skin and scraped away with a blade of metal. These weren't just hygiene tricks. They were, quietly, some of the earliest tools of human survival, as important in their own way as fire or the wheel. So let's go back to where we started. You, standing there, hands greasy, no soap in sight, staring at water that refuses to do its job. Now you know the truth. For nearly 200,000 years, humans faced this exact problem, over and over again, with no guarantee they would ever solve it. And yet, through accident, desperation, curiosity, and countless quiet experiments across completely disconnected corners of the world, they did. Ash and fat by a campfire, salt pulled from an Egyptian desert, a clay tablet in Babylon holding one of the oldest recipes ever written, oil and metal blades in Rome, crushed plants foaming in the hands of people who had never met each other, never spoken the same language, never shared a single idea. And somehow, all of them arrived at the same secret. That single bar of soap sitting quietly next to your sink isn't just a product, it's the final chapter of a 200,000-year mystery, one that humanity had to solve, piece by piece, civilization by civilization, or risk being destroyed by something too small to even see. Next time you wash your hands, pause for just 1 second, because that ordinary, forgettable moment is the ending of one of the longest, quietest survival stories in human history. A story with no heroes, no battles, no monuments, just millions of ordinary humans across thousands of years refusing to let something invisible win.